Hello everybody, my name is Colin White. I am the president and founder of BI Research, and I'm coming to you today from the Northwest BI Summit in sunny Grants Pass. It's very hot here today, but I have a great pleasure talking to Paul Clark, who's the Senior Director of Product Management at SAP. It's interesting here, we've been talking at this conference a lot about large enterprises, but you've been doing a lot of work with small medium businesses recently.
Yes, that's right. I've been working in the last couple of years. I've been working a lot with our partners and especially our resellers, and most of their customers are small and mid-sized enterprises.
Well, I suppose the first question to ask is, how does SAP define a small and medium business?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes.
There are revenue definitions and there are employee definitions. The survey itself is probably the good reference point. The survey focused on 20 million revenue up to 750 million revenue.
Okay. Yeah.
So not the really small end, and then nothing beyond the kind of the lower end of large enterprise.
So you were actually looking at the business problems they had, and in terms of what was stopping their growth and what they need to do. Perhaps you can talk about some of the problems these companies were facing.
Yeah, so we were asked them about what were the drivers, and this was a survey carried out by a group called Oxford Economics, and it was a global survey. So they were in 21 countries, 100 people per country. So it was a pretty big survey, and they were really asking the small and mid-sized enterprises, the SMEs, what are your concerns right now? What are your drivers, and where are your opportunities? And they came back with a few major conclusions. And really, there were four that stood out, and two of them in particular for me. The first was that they were all about globalization. They completely had adopted a global mindset. The second one was...
Whereas we tend to think of them as being more local.
That's right. I think there's a perception that if you're small or mid-sized, then you're probably going to be focused on your local business. And it turned out that there were only a quarter of them that were actually completely local, so they're getting all their revenue from their local market. Most of them are completely diversified around the region or the globe, especially in Asia. And then the second area was about what they described as business transformation. So it seemed to be a really important idea for these small, mid-sized companies. So they saw it as important that they had to transform their business, and that was how they were going to compete, not just with each other on a global basis, but also with the large enterprises. And they saw technology as being a critical part of that transformation.
What kind of technologies?
So a few things came out. The first of them was, I guess we asked a few questions. The first one was, where are you investing right now, and where do you see that changing? And the first one was, the big investments right now, or to date, have been around business management software. So I guess we're talking about things like ERP there. The second one was analytics, so particular interest to us.
Yeah.
And then the third one was mobile. And again, I think that there's a lot of use for analytics on mobile devices, so that was also interesting. And then when it came to the growth, how's that going to change? The big growth drivers were, or the changes for them were going to be cloud, and again analytics. So
why cloud? Because was that a cost factor?
Well, I think that partly because when you looked at adoption of cloud, it's actually relatively small right now.
Yeah.
So it still remained fairly small, but that's where there's a lot of growth going from a very small base to a bigger base. But yeah, I mean, so analytics popped up in both of those categories as being major today and then major growth going forward.
And so were they the main inhibitors, or were there other ones?
So they were the two of the big factors. I mean, I think the other thing was the fact that they saw themselves as operating in a global environment meant that they were really adopting that global mindset. So they were thinking, okay, I'm going to be competing with people in my own country, with other countries across the region, across the world, but also with those large guys. And so I need to be as agile as possible, and I need to invest in technology. Well, that was another interesting thing with technology. They saw technology not just as a facilitator to drive transformation, but also as a driver. So they actually saw the fact that there's so much online and there's so many mobile devices as a reason in itself that they had to constantly change their company just to adapt.
Do you think it's easier for a small and medium enterprise to move in this direction with these new technologies like analytics, like cloud, like mobile? Is it easier for them to move faster than a large enterprise?
It seems like it is. That seemed to be what came out. I mean, partly because they tend to be more agile anyway when they're smaller, but I think partly because it seemed to be so much more part of the culture. And I don't know whether that's the age of the company or just the size of the company, but they seem to be everybody in the organization seemed to think, okay, this is just the way we do business. We work in a social, on a mobile, and online environment, and we are going to be driven by the way that we use analytics to transform the business.
And do you think the fact they can compete with big enterprises or bigger enterprises is because of the fact that it is online, it is the internet, that the fact they're smaller than their bigger competitors doesn't really matter?
I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I think that even on a personal level, I think about where I buy things now. I end up buying from some really small organizations on the other side of the world through sites like Etsy.
Yeah.
You get stuff made in other continents, and so the reach for those small and mid-sized enterprises is now completely global.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for spending the time with me today. I'm sure we could talk about this a lot more.
There's a lot more we could cover.
Yeah, we've run out of time. So
All right.
Thanks for listening, and this is Colin White signing off from the Northwest BI Summit.
Thank you.